Relationships are often considered the cornerstone of human happiness, yet so many of them fail despite the initial spark of love, passion, and commitment. What most people fail to realize is that the challenges that lead to the breakdown of relationships are not random, they follow predictable patterns. According to leading relationship experts, there is a primary reason why most partnerships dissolve over time, a reason that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. This reason is not infidelity, financial strain, or even lack of communication in the conventional sense, although these factors do contribute. Instead, the core issue lies deeper: emotional disconnection. Emotional disconnection is the gradual drifting apart of partners on a psychological and emotional level, which can happen silently and subtly. It begins when partners stop truly engaging with each other's inner worlds, when listening becomes passive and empathy becomes scarce. Over time, the failure to meet each other's emotional needs creates a widening gap that no amount of occasional reconciliation can bridge. It's crucial to understand that emotional disconnection doesn't manifest overnight. It starts with small, seemingly insignificant behaviors, ignoring subtle cues, avoiding difficult conversations, and prioritizing personal agendas over mutual understanding. When these behaviors become habitual, they create patterns of resentment and misunderstanding that compound over time. Experts emphasize that emotional intimacy is not about grand gestures or public displays of affection. It's about consistent, meaningful interactions that foster trust, validation, and a sense of being understood. Without this foundation, even couples with strong physical chemistry or shared goals find themselves struggling, because the connection that sustains a long-term partnership is built on emotional resonance, not just attraction or convenience. Emotional disconnection can take many forms. One partner may withdraw during conflicts, another may stop sharing personal thoughts, or both may start living parallel lives under the same roof. The danger lies in the insidious nature of this disconnection. It often feels normal or justified, especially when stress, work, or life responsibilities dominate. The expert consensus is clear: relationships fail when the emotional bank account runs dry. Every interaction either deposits into or withdraws from this account. Positive reinforcement, validation, listening, and shared vulnerability increase the balance, while criticism, neglect, avoidance, and unresolved tension deplete it. Once the balance falls too low, the relationship becomes unsustainable, leading to emotional fatigue, resentment, and eventual separation. One of the most common misconceptions people have about relationship failure is that it results from a single catastrophic event, such as infidelity, betrayal, or a dramatic argument. In reality, these events are often symptoms of deeper, ongoing problems rather than the root cause themselves. Emotional disconnection is rarely a one-time occurrence. It is a process that unfolds gradually, often unnoticed by the partners themselves. Experts highlight that couples frequently underestimate the importance of daily emotional exchanges. Simple gestures of attentiveness, interest, and empathy may seem minor, but they're critical in maintaining the sense of closeness and mutual care that sustains a relationship. When these daily exchanges are neglected, partners begin to feel invisible, unappreciated, and misunderstood. This feeling of invisibility is particularly dangerous because it can lead to defensive behaviors, such as withdrawal, sarcasm, or silent resentment, which further widen the emotional gap. Another key factor contributing to emotional disconnection is the way couples handle conflict. Many relationships fail not because of conflicts themselves, they are inevitable, but because of the methods employed to manage them. Couples who lack effective communication strategies tend to escalate disagreements, avoid resolution, or emotionally shut down. Over time, this pattern of unresolved tension erodes trust and fosters feelings of alienation. Experts argue that successful relationships are built on the ability to navigate conflict with emotional awareness, empathy, and constructive problem-solving. Additionally, partners who fail to maintain individual emotional health often struggle to contribute positively to the relationship. Stress, trauma, past wounds, and unmet personal needs can impair a person's capacity to connect emotionally with their partner. Without self-awareness and emotional regulation, Even well-intentioned individuals can inadvertently withdraw, blame, or become emotionally unavailable, perpetuating the cycle of disconnection. Emotional intimacy requires intentional effort, vulnerability, and consistent reinforcement. It cannot be assumed or taken for granted. Couples who recognize and prioritize these dynamics often find themselves better equipped to sustain a resilient and fulfilling relationship, even in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Another critical insight offered by relationship experts is the concept of emotional mirroring and validation. Emotional mirroring is the ability to reflect back a partner's feelings in a way that shows understanding and acknowledgement, creating a sense of being seen and heard. Validation, similarly, is the conscious recognition that a partner's emotions are real, valid, and worthy of attention, even if they differ from one's own perspective. When these practices are absent, partners may feel neglected or dismissed, leading to emotional withdrawal. Experts emphasize that emotional validation is not about agreeing with everything a partner says, but about demonstrating respect for their experience and fostering psychological safety. Without this safety, individuals may retreat inward, seeking emotional fulfillment outside the relationship or suppressing their needs entirely. This suppression can have long-term consequences, including resentment, anxiety, and a sense of isolation within the relationship. Emotional mirroring and validation serve as the foundation for empathy, which is the ability to perceive, understand, and respond appropriately to a partner's emotional state. Empathy strengthens the bond between partners, promotes trust, and mitigates the destructive effects of conflict. When empathy declines, emotional disconnection accelerates, often leaving partners feeling emotionally stranded. Experts point out that emotional disconnection also interacts with other relational dynamics, such as power imbalances, unmet expectations, and differing attachment styles. For instance, partners with avoidant attachment tendencies may withdraw when conflict arises, while those with anxious attachment may become clingy or reactive. These dynamics, if left unchecked, create cycles of misunderstanding and dissatisfaction that are difficult to reverse. Relationship experts argue that the key to preventing failure lies in identifying these patterns early and committing to intentional strategies for emotional reconnection. These strategies include open communication, active listening, vulnerability exercises, and shared experiences that reinforce intimacy. By recognizing emotional disconnection as the primary threat, couples can focus their efforts on nurturing the invisible but vital threads that sustain long-term partnership. This requires dedication, patience, and self-awareness, but the payoff is profound: a resilient, deeply connected, and emotionally fulfilling relationship that can withstand external pressures and internal challenges alike. The role of expectations in relationship failure cannot be understated. Often, individuals enter relationships with unspoken assumptions about how love should be expressed, how conflict should be handled, and what level of emotional engagement is acceptable. When these expectations are not communicated or aligned, disappointment and frustration emerge, exacerbating emotional disconnection. Experts assert that clarity around expectations is critical for relational health. It is not enough to hope that a partner will just know what is needed. Explicit discussion about needs, desires, and boundaries is essential. Misaligned expectations can manifest in many ways. One partner may desire frequent emotional check-ins while the other prioritizes independence. One may value verbal affirmation while the other expresses love through actions. Without mutual understanding and compromise, these differences can become points of contention, gradually eroding the emotional fabric of the relationship. Furthermore, cultural and societal influences often shape expectations in ways that hinder emotional intimacy. For example, societal narratives about masculinity may discourage men from expressing vulnerability, while expectations about femininity may pressure women to prioritize emotional labor over self-care. These dynamics create structural barriers to emotional connection that require conscious effort to overcome. Relationship experts recommend that partners engage in ongoing dialogue about expectations, revisit them periodically, and adjust them as circumstances evolve. By doing so, Couples create a shared roadmap that fosters alignment, reduces misunderstandings, and strengthens emotional intimacy. Recognizing that relationships are dynamic systems rather than static entities is crucial. What works at one stage may not suffice at another. Life transitions, personal growth, and external stressors demand adaptability. Emotional disconnection often occurs when couples fail to evolve together, neglecting the ongoing maintenance required to keep the bond vibrant. In essence, unmet expectations act as silent erosive forces, gradually undermining trust, empathy, and intimacy. Experts highlight that successful couples cultivate both awareness and flexibility, learning to navigate changing needs with compassion and cooperation, thereby preventing the accumulation of emotional distance that typically precipitates relationship failure. Communication, often touted as the cornerstone of relationship success, plays a nuanced and complex role in the context of emotional disconnection. While many couples assume that talking more solves problems, experts clarify that it is the quality, not quantity, of communication that matters most. Superficial conversations or transactional exchanges, such as discussions about chores, finances, or logistics, do not fulfill the deep emotional needs of partners. Instead, what sustains intimacy are conversations that involve mutual curiosity, emotional transparency, and authentic engagement. Active listening, which involves fully attending to a partner's words, feelings, and underlying needs, is a critical component. Unfortunately, in many failing relationships, listening is performed passively or selectively, leading to misinterpretation, frustration, and emotional withdrawal. Experts also note the significance of nonverbal communication, which often conveys more emotional content than words alone. Facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and even silence carry vital information about a partner's emotional state. Ignoring or misreading these cues can amplify feelings of disconnection. Additionally, the timing and context of communication are crucial. Attempting to address sensitive issues during moments of high stress or distraction often backfires, reinforcing patterns of avoidance or defensiveness. Relationship experts recommend structured communication practices such as regular check-ins, empathy-focused dialogues, and problem-solving sessions to maintain connection and prevent emotional erosion. Emotional responsiveness, the ability to acknowledge, validate, and respond to a partner's needs, is central to this process. When responsiveness diminishes, even minor grievances can escalate, trust erodes, and emotional distance widens. Experts emphasize that cultivating effective communication is an ongoing practice rather than a one-time fix. It requires mindfulness, patience, and the willingness to adapt to evolving relational dynamics. Couples who master this art tend to experience greater resilience, emotional satisfaction, and a lower likelihood of relationship breakdown. Trust and vulnerability are equally essential in understanding why relationships fail. Emotional disconnection often arises from fear of judgment, rejection, or abandonment, which inhibits genuine vulnerability. When partners withhold their true thoughts and feelings to avoid conflict or emotional pain, the bond weakens. Experts explain that vulnerability is not a weakness, it is a fundamental mechanism for intimacy. Sharing fears, insecurities, and dreams invites reciprocal openness, deepening emotional connection. Conversely, the absence of vulnerability fosters superficiality, mistrust, and alienation. Furthermore, past experiences, unresolved trauma, or attachment injuries can magnify fear, creating barriers to emotional availability. In such cases, professional guidance or therapeutic interventions may be necessary to rebuild trust and facilitate authentic engagement. Experts assert that relationships thrive when partners feel safe to express their authentic selves without fear of criticism or abandonment. This emotional safety is cultivated through consistent support, attentive listening, empathy, and reassurance. When emotional safety is compromised through repeated criticism, betrayal, or neglect, partners may resort to coping mechanisms such as withdrawal, defensiveness, or seeking validation elsewhere. Over time, These protective strategies inadvertently reinforce the emotional disconnect, creating a cycle that is difficult to break. Awareness of these dynamics is critical. Recognizing the interplay of trust, vulnerability, and emotional responsiveness allows couples to intervene before the relationship deteriorates irreversibly. Relationship experts emphasize that cultivating emotional intimacy, rebuilding trust, and encouraging vulnerability are ongoing responsibilities that require patience, effort, and mutual commitment. Those who neglect these areas risk the slow but inevitable erosion of the emotional bond that sustains long-term partnership, ultimately leading to separation despite initial love or attraction. Lifestyle factors and external stressors also play a significant role in the emergence of emotional disconnection. Modern life is replete with distractions, career pressures, social obligations, technological engagement, and family responsibilities, all of which can detract from the time and energy available for meaningful relational engagement. Experts note that couples who fail to intentionally prioritize their relationship often find themselves emotionally drifting apart, even when no overt conflict exists. Quality time, shared experiences, and rituals of connection are not optional extras. They are essential investments in maintaining emotional closeness. Additionally, differences in coping mechanisms and stress management strategies can exacerbate disconnection. For instance, one partner may seek solitude during stress, while the other craves support and engagement. Without awareness and adaptation, these differences can generate frustration, resentment, and further withdrawal. Relationship experts highlight the importance of co-regulation, the practice of mutually supporting each other's emotional states, as a tool for sustaining connection. Mindful engagement, shared activities, and intentional expressions of appreciation contribute to the relational glue that counteracts external pressures. Moreover, neglecting self-care or personal growth can indirectly affect the relationship, as emotional depletion limits one's capacity for empathy and responsiveness. Experts emphasize that emotional disconnection is rarely caused by a single factor. It is the cumulative result of internal dynamics, interpersonal patterns, and external stressors interacting over time. By identifying these contributing elements and implementing proactive strategies, couples can mitigate the risk of relational decline, reinforce emotional intimacy, and build resilience against the inevitable challenges that arise throughout the course of a long-term partnership. In conclusion, the primary reason most relationships fail, according to relationship experts, is emotional disconnection, a gradual erosion of intimacy, trust, and mutual understanding that often occurs silently and subtly. This disconnection results from a combination of factors, including ineffective communication, unmet emotional needs, misaligned expectations, lack of vulnerability, and external stressors. While dramatic events may act as triggers, they are rarely the root cause. Experts stress that sustaining a healthy, long-term relationship requires intentional effort, self-awareness, empathy, and consistent emotional engagement. Practical strategies to prevent disconnection include prioritizing meaningful communication, validating and mirroring each other's emotions, nurturing vulnerability and trust, clarifying expectations, managing conflict constructively, and investing time and energy in shared experiences. By adopting these practices, couples can maintain the emotional currency that underpins intimacy, ensuring that their connection remains resilient, fulfilling, and enduring. Understanding that relationships are dynamic systems rather than static entities is crucial. Ongoing attention, adaptability, and mutual support are essential for long-term success. Ultimately, the failure to maintain emotional connection, not a single betrayal, argument, or hardship, is the most common and preventable reason relationships collapse. Couples who recognize and actively address this dynamic have the potential to cultivate lasting love, deep understanding, and a partnership that thrives amidst life's inevitable complexities.